The cool mist of the Scottish Hebrides had barely lifted from the sea when the small transport van bumped up the rocky track to the Old Manse fishery on the Isle of Rona. Hamish MacLeod, 68, looked up from mending his crab pots on the stone pier, his thick cable-knit sweater already damp from the morning air. He squinted at the approaching vehicle, expecting the powerful Norwegian forest cat he'd ordered to help manage the Old Manse's persistent rodent problem. "You Hamish MacLeod?" called out the driver, a cheerful woman named Fiona, as she hopped down from the cab with a clipboard. "That's me," Hamish replied, setting down his needle and walking toward the van. "You got my new working cat?" "Got a cat for you, that's for sure," Fiona said, scratching her head as she looked at the paperwork. "Says here, Onyx Shadow. Registered munchkin shipped from a specialty breeder in Edinburgh. Destination: Old Manse Fishery, Isle of Rona, Outer Hebrides." Hamish's face went pale. Munchkin. "Lass, I ordered a proper hunter, a $150 Maine Coon, a serious working cat. What in the name of the North Sea is a munchkin?" Fiona was already opening the back of the van, clearly eager to finish the delivery. "Look, mister, I just drive them. Paperwork says Old Manse Fishery, and my GPS brought me here. This wee beastie has been on the road for 2 days and needs to stretch his legs." What emerged from that carrier made Hamish's jaw drop so far it nearly hit the pier stone. Onyx Shadow was indeed a cat, technically, but at just 6 inches tall at the shoulder, he was barely the size of a large kitten. He had a stunning black velvet coat that absorbed the morning light, a long, fluffy tail, and the most intelligent amber eyes Hamish had ever seen on any creature. But he was tiny, comically, impossibly tiny for a fishery that needed serious pest control. That's not a cat," Hamish stammered. "That's a fancy cushion with a tail." "That's a registered American munchkin," Fiona corrected, reading from the papers. "Premium bloodlines, too. Says here he's been rejected by 3 different breeders for failure to meet show standards and aggressive vocalizations toward handlers." Hamish rubbed his face with both hands. "Let me get this straight. Somebody sent me a miniature cat, a mean one, apparently, instead of the mouser I paid good money for. All I know is the paperwork says Onyx Shadow goes to this address," Fiona said, already backing toward her van. "Certificates are in this envelope. Good luck with him, Mr. MacLeod." As the van disappeared in a cloud of sea spray, Hamish found himself standing alone with a cat that could literally walk under his smallest lobster pot without touching it. Onyx Shadow stood in the temporary pen, looking around at the vast, damp fishery, with what Hamish could only describe as resignation in those dark, intelligent eyes. He was surrounded by Hamish's 5 full-sized working dogs, a team of border collies, who were leaning over the low gate from their adjacent kennel, barking with curiosity at this bizarre newcomer. The size difference was almost comical. Onyx Shadow could have walked beneath any of their bellies without them noticing. "Well, little fella," Hamish said quietly, approaching the pen carefully. "Looks like somebody made a mighty big mistake, or a mighty small one, depending on how you look at it." Onyx Shadow's small head turned toward Hamish's voice, and the old fisherman could have sworn he saw intelligence and sadness in those eyes. Not the aggressive monster the paperwork described, but something that reminded him of his late wife, Moira's, rescue birds, creatures that had been hurt and needed patience more than discipline. Hamish's closest neighbor, Harry Sinclair, arrived within the hour, her small fishing trawler pulling up to the pier. At 55, Myri ran a small animal sanctuary on the adjacent islet and had known Hamish since they were kids climbing the slippery rocks. "Hamish MacLeod, what in the name of the sea is that wee creature in your pen?" she called out, climbing onto the pier with the energy of someone half her age. "Apparently, that's my new mouser," Hamish replied dryly, showing her the paperwork. "Though I suspect the real Old Manse fishery is probably somewhere else entirely. Wondering where their miniature cat is." Mary read through the documents, her eyebrows climbing higher with each page. "Man, do you have any idea what you've got here? This little cat's bloodline is worth serious money. His sire was a Duke of Edinburgh munchkin, one of the most expensive show cats ever sold at auction. These bloodlines can go for $20,000 or $30,000. Then why has he been rejected by everyone who tried to work with him? Hamish asked, gesturing to the notes about aggressive vocalizations. As if responding to the question, Onyx Shadow approached the fence where they stood, moving with a grace that seemed impossible for something so small. Up close, both could see evidence of his troubled past: small, faded cuts on his ear, scars on his legs, and a weariness in his posture that spoke of harsh treatment, despite his tiny size. "Oh, you poor darling," Mare whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "They tried to train you just like they would a full-sized cat, didn't they? Used the same rough methods on a tiny body." Onyx Shadow's response was to lower his miniature head until his nose nearly touched Mary's outstretched hand. It was a gesture of trust so unexpected from an allegedly aggressive animal that both neighbors fell silent. "Hamish," Mary said quietly, "I don't think this delivery was a mistake at all. I think this little cat was meant to end up exactly where he is." As the Hebridean sun climbed higher, burning off the morning mist, the old fisherman found himself wondering how he was supposed to explain this to his daughter. But looking at Onyx Shadow's intelligent eyes and feeling something stir in his chest that he hadn't felt since Moira's death 3 years ago, Hamish realized that some complications might just be blessings in very small packages. The wrong cat had arrived at his fishery, and somehow Hamish suspected his quiet retirement was about to get a whole lot more interesting. 3 days after Onyx Shadow's unexpected arrival, Hamish discovered something that made him question everything he thought he knew about animals, big or small. He was in the main storage shed fixing a broken gear winch when one of his working dogs, a young collie named Fergus, got his paw tangled in some old netting that had worked loose from a storage bin. The collie's distressed whimpering echoed across the fishery, catching Onyx Shadow's attention immediately. What happened next made Hamish freeze in his tracks. The miniature cat, who'd been relaxing peacefully on a bale of rope, began making high-pitched, urgent, almost frantic meowing sounds. Within seconds, Hamish's lead dog, a seasoned border collie named Sky, trotted over to the rope bale, separating the cat's safe space from the storage area. Onyx Shadow continued his vocalizations, and to Hamish's amazement, Sky seemed to understand. The big collie turned and went directly to where Fergus was trapped, then began gently nudging the netting near the paw. "Well, I'll be sunk," Hamish muttered, jogging over with his knife. Onyx Shadow had somehow communicated exactly where the problem was. By the time Hamish freed Fergus, several local hands had gathered to witness the impossible scene. Onyx Shadow stood on the rope bale, watching intently until the collie was safely released, then let out what could only be described as a satisfied purr before returning to his nap. Word spread through the aisles faster than a herring run in summer. By the weekend, Hamish's fishery had an unusual number of visitors, all curious to see the tiny cat that was supposedly causing chaos on a working fishing operation. "I heard he tried to bite one of your dogs," said Duncan McGregor, a neighboring lobsterman who'd sailed over with his morning thermos still steaming. "That's funny," Hamish replied, pointing to where Onyx Shadow was standing peacefully near the kennel, with Hamish's largest dog lying down beside the pen as close as he could get to the miniature. "Because all he's done is make friends with every dog and person on this property." Mhairi arrived that afternoon with Dr. Alistair Finn, the county's most experienced feline veterinarian. At 47, Dr. Finn had treated everything from alley cats to purebred show animals, but even he seemed puzzled by Onyx Shadow's behavior. "His medical records show multiple incidents of aggressive behavior," he said, reviewing the documents while observing the miniature from a safe distance. "Scratching handlers, refusing to be groomed, destroying equipment. But look at him now." Onyx Shadow was lying in a patch of sun, completely relaxed, while Hamish's old fishing retriever, Brogan, dozed peacefully beside the pen. The scene looked more like a children's storybook illustration than a dangerous animal situation. "Dr. Finn," Mhairi said thoughtfully, "what if those previous facilities were the problem, not Onyx Shadow?" The veterinarian considered this while watching the miniature's calm demeanor. "It's definitely possible. Munchkins are incredibly intelligent, and they're more sensitive than full-sized cats because of their size. If he was handled roughly or kept in stressful conditions, he might have been defending himself. Plus, many facilities don't know how to properly work with miniatures. They either treat them like toys or use the same forceful methods they'd use on a 15-pound cat on a 5-pound miniature. That evening, as Hamish made his rounds feeding the animals, the miniature cat approached his pen and gently took a piece of fish directly from Hamish's weathered hands, his tiny muzzle so soft that Hamish barely felt it. Moira always said, "Animals know good hearts from bad ones," Hamish whispered to himself, remembering his late wife's wisdom about the rescue birds she'd cared for over the years. The next morning brought an unwelcome phone call that would change everything. Hamish answered on the third ring to hear an agitated voice on the other end. "This is Angus Ironhand from Ironhand Miniature Felines in Edinburgh. I'm looking for a miniature cat that was supposed to be delivered to Tidal Treasures Petting Farm last week. Black and white, goes by Onyx Shadow. My shipping tracker shows the transport stopped at your location." Hamish's stomach sank as he realized their peaceful interlude was about to end. "Yes, sir. He's here. Driver said he had the right address." "Well, he didn't. That cat is scheduled for transport to a livestock auction in 2 days. He's caused nothing but problems, and I want him gone. I'm sending another truck to pick him up this afternoon." After hanging up, Hamish walked slowly to the pen where Onyx Shadow had made friends with all his full-sized dogs. The miniature's presence had transformed the entire atmosphere of the fishery, bringing a lightness that Hamish hadn't felt since Moira's death. "I'm sorry, little guy," Hamish said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "Looks like your vacation's over." Onyx Shadow approached the fence and pressed his small head against Hamish's leg as high as he could reach, as if sensing that their time together was coming to an end. In that moment, the old fisherman made a decision that would surprise everyone who knew his practical nature. He pulled out his phone and called Angus Ironhand back. "Mr. Ironhand, this is Hamish MacLeod again. I'd like to make you an offer for that cat." The silence on the other end lasted so long that Hamish wondered if the man had hung up on him. Finally, Angus Ironhand's gruff voice came through the speaker. "You want to buy Onyx Shadow? Mr. MacLeod, do you have any idea what kind of liability you'd be taking on? That miniature has cost me more in vet bills and damaged equipment than he's worth." "How much?" Hamish asked simply. $8,000. And that's just to get him off my books. But I'm telling you, MacLeod, you'll regret it. That animal's got a mean streak a mile wide." Hamish looked at Onyx Shadow, who was gently nuzzling one of his border collies through the fence, showing the kind of social behavior that contradicted everything in his file. "I'll give you $5,000 cash, and you never have to worry about him again." The negotiation that followed revealed more about Onyx Shadow's troubled history than the official paperwork ever had. Angus Ironhand had purchased the miniature 3 years earlier for his premium bloodlines, expecting him to become the cornerstone of an elite breeding operation for show miniatures. "Spent $18,000 on him at auction," Angus admitted reluctantly. "But he wouldn't cooperate with our handling program. Got defensive with handlers, knocked over equipment with his tail. 3 different show facilities rejected him before I got stuck with him. Little cat, big attitude problem." "What if the problem wasn't the cat?" Hamish asked quietly. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Maybe he just needed the right environment, different handling, patience instead of force. These miniatures aren't toys or just small cats. They need different treatment." Angus laughed bitterly. "Old man, you sound like my ex-wife talking about her rescue birds. This is livestock, not a therapy session." But when Hamish mentioned that Onyx Shadow had been peacefully coexisting with full-sized dogs and even helping communicate problems with the fishing equipment, something in Angus's tone shifted. "You're serious about this purchase?" the Edinburgh breeder asked. "Dead serious. $5,000 final offer. Deal. But I want it in writing that you're taking full responsibility. Any injuries, property damage, lawsuits, they're all on you." That afternoon, while Harry helped him navigate the legal paperwork for purchasing Onyx Shadow, Hamish received another unexpected call. This one from someone whose voice made his chest tighten with a mix of joy and anxiety. "Daddy, it's Isla." Hamish's daughter, Isla MacLeod Fraser, lived in Glasgow with her solicitor husband and 2 teenage children. She hadn't visited the fishery in over a year. Their relationship strained since Moira's death, when Hamish had refused to sell the fishery and move to the city. "Isla, honey, what's wrong?" Hamish asked, his heart racing. "I heard from Mary about some miniature cat you bought." "Daddy, are you losing your mind? You're 68 years old running that fishery alone. What if something happens?" "Nothing's going to happen, sweetheart. This little cat is gentle as a lamb." "That's not what the internet says," Isla replied, and Hamish could hear typing in the background. "I looked up this onyx shadow online. There are incident reports, handler complaints, warnings about aggressive behavior." "Daddy, this is insane." The conversation that followed was painful, but necessary. Isla revealed that she and her brother, Rory, had been discussing selling the fishery and moving Hamish to an assisted living facility in Glasgow, ending what they saw as his dangerous isolation in rural Rona. "We love you, Daddy, but we can't keep worrying that we'll get a call saying you've been hurt and alone out there for days." After Isla hung up, promising to sail down within the week to assess the situation, Hamish sat on his pier, feeling more alone than he had since Moira's funeral. But as evening fell, Onyx Shadow meowed from his pen, a soft sound that somehow conveyed companionship. "They think I'm crazy, little guy," Hamish said, walking over to the fence. "Lonely old widower buys a problem cat he can't afford." Onyx Shadow's response was to press his small body against the fence, as close to Hamish as he could get, his dark eyes full of understanding. "But you're not a problem, are you?" Hamish continued, reaching through to stroke the miniature's soft head. "You're just misunderstood, like me, I guess." That night, Dr. Finn called with news that would complicate everything even further. "Hamish, I've been researching Onyx Shadow's bloodlines," he said, excitement clear in his voice. "Do you realize what you actually own? His genetics are extraordinary. With the right breeding program, he could sire kittens worth $10,000 to $15,000 each. You're sitting on a gold mine." "Dr. Finn, I'm a fisherman, not a cat breeder." "But you could be, Hamish. This miniature could transform your entire operation. Between his stud fees and selling kittens, you could make more money than you do with crab pots." As Hamish processed this information, he realized that Onyx Shadow's arrival might not have been a simple delivery mistake. After all, the tiny cat, who'd been rejected by everyone else, had somehow found his way to exactly the right place, bringing with him possibilities that neither man nor miniature had ever imagined. The question was whether Hamish would have the courage to embrace a future that looked nothing like the quiet retirement he'd planned, especially with his children threatening to intervene, and the weight of Onyx Shadow's troubled reputation still hanging over them both. But looking at the miniature peacefully dozing under the Rona stars, Hamish felt something he hadn't experienced since Moira's death: hope for tomorrow. Isla MacLeod Fraser arrived at the old man's fishery on a scorching Tuesday morning, scorching for Rona anyway, her chartered boat having led her through the familiar channels she'd once known by heart. At 43, Isla had inherited her father's stubborn streak, but wrapped it in the polished confidence of a successful Glasgow solicitor. She stepped out wearing expensive wool and city boots, completely unprepared for what she was about to witness. "Daddy, where's this dangerous miniature I've been reading about?" she called out, finding Hamish in the supply shed, organizing fishing lures with the methodical precision that had always defined his routines. "Out in the side pen with the dogs," Hamish replied. "But Isla, before you see him, I need you to understand." "I understand plenty," Isla interrupted, pulling out her smartphone. "I've read every report, looked at all the complaints. This Onyx Shadow has a documented history of aggression. What I don't understand is why my father would risk his safety for some animal he doesn't even need." Their conversation was interrupted by Mary's arrival, accompanied by a distinguished-looking man in his 50s, wearing pressed tweeds and carrying an expensive leather bag. "Hamish, I hope you don't mind," Mary said, slightly breathless. "This is Dr. Malcolm Scott from the University of Glasgow's Feline Behavior Program. He drove up from the city after I told him about Onyx Shadow's bloodlines. Dr. Scott stepped forward with the measured confidence of someone accustomed to dealing with valuable animals. Mr. McLeod, I've been studying your miniature's genetic profile, and I needed to see him in person. What I'm about to tell you will sound incredible, but can we please just see this supposed monster first? Ivy interjected impatiently. The four of them walked toward the pen where Onyx Shadow was relaxing alongside Hamish's 5 full-sized border collies. The size contrast was almost absurd. The miniature looked like a toy next to the working dogs, except he was fully mature and carrying himself with quiet dignity. But it was what happened next that left everyone, including Isla, completely speechless. A small puffin came waddling through the gravel, startled by a boat's horn. In its panic, the bird ran directly beneath one of the collies, who yelped and jumped up in surprise, paws flailing dangerously. Any other small creature in that pen would have been crushed in the chaos, but Onyx Shadow moved with lightning speed, placing his tiny body between the panicking puffin and the stomping paws. He let out a sharp, commanding meow that immediately caught the attention of the collie, who froze mid-jump. The puffin flapped away safely into nearby brush, and Onyx Shadow calmly returned to his spot, as if he hadn't just prevented a tragedy. "My word," Isla whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. "Did that miniature cat just protect a wild puffin?" "That's impossible," Dr. Scott said, his academic composure cracking. "Cats don't possess that kind of protective instinct toward other species, especially prey animals they have no relationship with. The cognitive processing alone." But Onyx Shadow wasn't finished demonstrating his extraordinary nature. As they watched in amazement, he approached the fence where they stood, moving with deliberate gentleness. Instead of the aggressive posturing his reputation suggested, he made soft, trilling sounds and carefully touched his tiny nose to Isla's outstretched hand. "He's trying to communicate," Isla said wonderingly, all her preconceptions crumbling in real time. "Daddy, this isn't what I expected at all." Dr. Scott opened his leather bag with trembling hands and pulled out a thick folder of genetic analysis papers. "Mr. McLeod, what I'm about to tell you explains everything you've witnessed. Onyx Shadow isn't just any miniature cat. His genetic markers indicate he possesses an extremely rare combination of intelligence genes that appear perhaps once in every 50,000 feline births." "What does that mean in plain English?" Hamish asked. "It means your miniature cat is essentially a genius. His cognitive abilities are off the charts for his species. The aggression reported at other facilities wasn't meanness. It was frustration. Imagine being incredibly intelligent, but trapped in situations where no one understands your needs or communication attempts. Then add the physical vulnerability of being a miniature cat in facilities designed for full-sized animals." Isla sank down onto a mooring post, her solicitor composure completely shattered. "You're telling me my father accidentally acquired a super-intelligent miniature cat?" "Not just intelligent," Dr. Scott continued, his excitement growing. "Based on his behavior patterns and genetic profile, Onyx Shadow could revolutionize our understanding of feline cognition. Universities would pay hundreds of thousands just to study him. The breeding potential alone. Every kitten would carry some of these remarkable genes." Mare had been unusually quiet during this revelation, but now she stepped forward with tears in her eyes. "Hamish, do you remember what Moira used to say about animals choosing their people?" Hamish nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "She always said, the right animals find their way to the right humans, when both need healing most." "This wasn't a delivery mistake," Mare said softly. "This was Moira sending you exactly what you needed. Exactly when you needed it." As if responding to the mention of Moira's name, Onyx Shadow approached the fence where Hamish stood and gently pressed his miniature forehead against the old fisherman's leg as high as he could reach, in a gesture of such profound affection that even Dr. Scott fell silent. "Daddy," Isla said, her voice breaking. "I came here to convince you to sell this place and move to Glasgow. But looking at him, looking at you both together, I think maybe I'm the one who needs to reconsider some things." That evening, As news of Onyx Shadow's extraordinary abilities began spreading through academic and agricultural circles, Hamish realized that his quiet retirement had ended forever. But instead of fear, he felt a deep sense of purpose that had been missing since Moira's death. The rejected miniature who was sent to the wrong fishery had turned out to be exactly the right miracle for a lonely widower who didn't know he was waiting to be rescued too. By Monday morning, Hamish's peaceful fishery had transformed into chaos. News vans, flown over on a chartered ferry, lined the main road leading to the old man's fishery, their satellite dishes reaching toward the Hebridean sky. "Mr. MacLeod, BBC Scotland News," shouted a perfectly styled reporter as Hamish attempted to feed his dogs. "Can you tell us about your super-intelligent miniature cat?" "The Daily Mail would like to do a live segment with you and Onyx Shadow," called another journalist, waving her microphone. Hamish retreated to his house, overwhelmed by the invasion. Through the window, he could see Onyx Shadow standing at the far edge of his pen, as far from the commotion as possible, his intelligent eyes clearly disturbed by all the strangers and noise. Isla, who had extended her stay indefinitely, fielded phone calls with the efficiency of someone accustomed to managing a crisis. "No, my father will not be appearing on any reality shows," she said firmly into her phone. "And absolutely no film crews near Onyx Shadow." The most persistent caller was Sir Alistair Goldwyn, a billionaire pet investor from London who'd been trying to reach Hamish for 3 days straight. "Mr. MacLeod," Goldwyn's smooth voice carried the confidence of someone accustomed to getting what he wanted. "I'm prepared to offer you $1 million for Onyx Shadow. Cash today." $1 million. The number hit Hamish like a physical blow. It was more money than he'd see in 5 lifetimes of fishing, enough to secure his future, pay off the fishery, and leave something substantial for his children and grandchildren. That's a lot of money, Mr. Goldwyn. It's just the beginning. With Onyx Shadow's genetics and intelligence, we could create a breeding program worth tens of millions. I'm talking about revolutionizing the entire miniature cat industry. After hanging up, Hamish sat in his kitchen, staring at the number he'd written on a notepad. $1 million. Outside, reporters continued shouting questions, and his peaceful fishery felt more like a circus than a home. Dr. Scott arrived that afternoon with a convoy of vehicles from the University of Glasgow, including a mobile feline lab and several graduate students with measuring equipment and tablets. "Hamish, we need to conduct comprehensive cognitive testing on Onyx Shadow," Dr. Scott explained, barely containing his academic excitement. "The preliminary observations suggest intelligence levels we've never documented in felines. This could rewrite textbooks." But when they approached Onyx Shadow's pen, the miniature's reaction was immediate and heartbreaking. The tiny cat, who'd shown such gentleness and trust, now pressed himself against the back fence, his eyes wide with what could only be described as panic. His small body was trembling. "He's terrified," Isla observed, her legal training helping her read the situation clearly. "All these strangers, all this attention. It's traumatizing him. He's too small to feel safe with all these people." Dr. Scott frowned, consulting his notes. "This is consistent with his history at the Edinburgh facilities. High intelligence combined with the physical vulnerability of being a miniature, plus sensitivity to environmental stress. It explains his previous behavioral problems." Mhairi, who'd been watching from her trawler, finally approached the group with fire in her eyes. "Y'all are about to undo everything good that's happened here. Look at that little cat. He's shutting down just like he did in Edinburgh." As if to prove her point, Onyx Shadow let out a high-pitched, distressed meow that echoed across the entire fishery. It was a cry of fear that made every person present feel like they were witnessing something precious being destroyed. "Everyone needs to leave," Hamish said suddenly, his voice cutting through the academic chatter. "Right now, all of you." "Mr. MacLeod, surely you understand the scientific importance," Dr. Scott began. "I understand that little cat is scared, and nobody seems to care about that, except how much he's worth or how famous he could make someone," Hamish interrupted, showing more backbone than Isla had seen from her father in years. "This is private property, and you're all trespassing. Get out." It took 2 hours to clear everyone out, including having to call the local constable to move the news vans. But as the last vehicle disappeared down the road, a remarkable transformation occurred. Onyx Shadow slowly approached the fence where Hamish stood alone, his small frame still trembling slightly from the stress. "I'm sorry, little guy," Hamish said softly, reaching through the fence to stroke the miniature's soft head. "I let them turn you into a spectacle. That wasn't right." Onyx Shadow's response was to press his forehead against Hamish's leg, the same gesture of trust he'd shown since his arrival. But now there was something desperate in the contact, as if the tiny cat was clinging to the one human who'd ever seen him as more than a commodity. "Daddy," Isla said, approaching carefully. "That London investor called again while you were clearing everyone out. He's increased his offer to 2 million Tualrosars. 2 million. The number was incomprehensible. Hamish could sell the fishery, buy Isla and Rory houses, ensure his grandchildren's university educations, and still have enough left over to live comfortably for the rest of his life. He could retire properly, maybe travel like Moira had always wanted. But looking into Onyx Shadow's trusting eyes, Hamish realized that some things couldn't be measured in pounds sterling. The miniature cat who'd arrived by mistake had brought purpose back to his life, given him something to care about beyond just existing from one lonely day to the next. "Isla," he said quietly, "call Mr. Goldwyn back and tell him Onyx Shadow isn't for sale. Not for 2 million Tors, not for any amount." "Daddy, are you sure? That's an incredible amount of money. You could retire comfortably, move closer to us." "I'm sure, sweetheart. This little cat trusted me when nobody else would. I'm not about to betray that trust now for any amount of money." As father and daughter stood together, watching Onyx Shadow gradually relax in the evening light, both understood that they'd just witnessed something rare in the modern world. A person choosing loyalty over profit, relationship over riches. The media storm would continue. The offers would keep coming, and the pressure would only intensify. But at the heart of the old man's fishery, an old man and a misunderstood miniature cat had found something worth more than all the money in the world: unconditional trust. Now they just had to figure out how to protect it from a world that wanted to turn their friendship into a fortune. 6 months later, the old man's fishery had transformed into something neither Hamish nor Onyx Shadow could have imagined. The media attention had eventually died down, but what remained was far more meaningful. A steady stream of visitors who came not to gawk or exploit, but to learn. Dr. Finn had partnered with Hamish to establish the Onyx Shadow Institute for Feline Intelligence, a small research facility that studied miniature cat cognition in natural, stress-free environments. Graduate students from universities across the country came to observe Onyx Shadow's remarkable behaviors, but always under strict protocols that prioritized the little cat's well-being over scientific curiosity. The key breakthrough, Dr. Finn explained to a group of visiting veterinary students, was understanding that intelligence in miniature cats requires emotional security to fully manifest. Onyx Shadow's genius was always there. He just needed the right environment and a human who saw past his size to express it safely. Isla had made the most surprising decision of all. After months of traveling back and forth between Glasgow and the Isle of Rona, she'd convinced her husband to let her work remotely,